Hey folks, welcome back to 3 Zen. Now I'm going to take a couple moments and talk to you about an aspect of recovery from alcoholism that I and most of us deal with, and that's being restored to sanity. The second step of the 12-step program says something like, came to believe in a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. The inference there being that we were kind of nuts. Yeah, I can relate to that. And I relate to that through story here. Toward the end of my drinking, when my wife would go to work, she'd get to the end of the driveway and I'd watch out the front window. And when I saw those two red lights come on, the two tail lights, that was my drinking lights. So I saw those two red lights come on. I'd go to the refrigerator, get a couple cans of Bud Light, and get my chainsaw, get my gloves and my earplugs, and head out front to take down a tree. I could, in those days, 91, 92, 93, I could drop a tree and by the end of the day have it cut up and have the brush cleared. God, I'd love to be able to do that again without the beer. Anyway, so I'd go out there and cut this tree down, and then actually I got pretty good at dropping those where I wanted them. So then I'd start cutting them into 18-inch lengths because that was the length that my stove called for in those days. So I'd cut them 18 inches. I'd have my tape measure with me, and I'd cut them 18 inches. And then I'd go to the next log, cut it, next log, measure it, cut it, and so forth. You get the idea. Then I'd look back. Now, I've always had an ability to kind of tell a quarter inch from a fair distance away. I could look at something across the room, and if it was an eighth or quarter inch, I could see it. And I don't know why, but I could. So I'd look back and I'd see this one log that I cut, and it doesn't look quite right. So I'd take my tape measure, go over there, and sure enough, it'd be 18 and 3/8 of an inch. You gotta be. So I'd take my chainsaw and I'd cut that 3/8 inch off the end of that log. Because you see, in those days, I just could not stand to have somebody look at something I did and criticize it. I just wasn't going to tolerate it. A perfectionist, if you will. I just got to shake my head today. I was nuts. So I'd cut that off. Now, if it was too short, if it was short 3/8 of an inch, I'd take that log and walk it to the back of my property and chunk it in the swamp back there because it reflected something that I did that, quote, wasn't perfect. And didn't think any more about it. Just sat out there and gleefully cut logs off the tree and kind of went with it. When you get sober, if you don't engage in a spiritual program, it's going to bite you in the butt. You've got to have this spiritual component to your recovery. And I truly embraced that, but I fought it at the same time. So when I sobered up, I still had some trees out front to cut, and I was still cutting them 18 inches because I thought if Eric Schmuckenfuss was driving down Obie Road and he looked over at my wood pile, he'd see a log that was ½ inch too short or ½ inch too long, and he'd start laughing at me, and that would just tear me up. So I still cut them 18 inches long, and every now and then I'd have one that didn't work out quite right. And the bottom line, things weren't going Bob's way sometimes. And that generated anger within me. It was like I had to kind of get mad at God for a while. And I talked to my sponsor about it at the time, and my sponsor said, Bob, if you get mad at God, don't worry about it. He's got thick skin. He can take it. So one day I was out there and I cut a log, and it was 18.5 inches long, let's say. And I looked up at him, and I had measured it. And I looked up at him, and I said, God, are you happy with me? Is this what you wanted me to do? Was to cut these logs and be off with it? I'm measuring the damn things. What more can I do? And is this the person you wanted me to be? And I went on into a couple other things. I said to him, what is it, God? Is it you and St. Pete sitting up there thinking, hey, we don't have anything else to do today. Let's go down and screw with Bob. So you set this up to where I'm off with these damn logs. And I mean, I was really pissed off at God that day. And I was swearing at him and everything. I said, you got to be happy. Did you make me sober so I could be miserable? And you and St. Pete can sit there and get a giggle out of me? Oh, I went on and on like that. And then all of a sudden, a thought came to my mind. Hey, listen, you knucklehead. You don't think with everything going on in the world, God doesn't have more to do than to come down and screw with you in your simpering little life? And I felt a wave of humility roll over me. It was something like I'd never experienced before. But this humility just came over me when I thought about it in that context. And I set the chainsaw down. I fell to my knees and I said, I'm sorry, God. I really am sorry. I I don't suppose I meant it. I didn't mean it. Just frustrated and so forth. But I've learned a lesson, God. I know you have other things to do than to screw with me. I'm doing a fine job of screwing with myself. And I was. So that was the day I discovered humility. And I like that feeling of humility. Um, I embraced it. And I've tried to practice it with my life. I don't always achieve the humility that I seek, but I know it's there. I've had a taste of it. And just like the comments that I see on my videos, I'm very humbled by them. I enjoy telling the stories. I tell them to enlighten you. I tell them to entertain you. But the feedback I get is very humiliating, humbling. And I do appreciate that. So if you're in recovery and you're struggling with some of these things, keep going. Just keep going. You'll get there. You'll get there. I did, and if I can, my goodness, anyone can. It's not easy, but it is a simple program. So with that, I'll leave that aspect for today, and we'll move on to something else. This is Bobo at 3's End. Base gear. Stop.